things in the culture. Yeah, so today's Ram Navami. So I thought we'll deal with one very thorny and knotty issue, which is the supposedly bad treatment of Sita by Rama, and this is one of the regular criticisms that he's an avatar, he's God, how did he treat his wife like that? This is such a wrong thing on his part. And then we have all the feminist arguments with the favorite word of patriarchy. So I just thought we'll take a look at the story, because all these stories come, all these criticisms come from a modern perspective, a kind of mindset about human relationships and how society should be ordered that is hardly 40, 50 years old. And the time of the Ramayana and the time that Valmiki wrote the Ramayana was a very, very different time. Now, I'm not talking about saying that it is not valid to have modern standards of behavior on ancient. I'm only saying most people don't know the story properly, which is why they are hurling these accusations around. Now, the core criticism I might as well get out of the way first, because of the core criticism is he took he made his brother take her out into the forest and abandon her when she was pregnant. Yeah, and this is because some washerman made some snide comments that basically what the washerman said was that since our king has taken his wife back, now all our wives can spend time with other men and then we won't have any option. Yatha Raja Tata Praja, as the king does so. Now, yes, this is a very common story, it is well known all over. There is only one problem with it. It's not part of the original Ramayana. Valmiki never wrote that. Valmiki's Ramayana ends, which is what would be supposed to be the authentic text. Valmiki Ramayana ends with the coronation of Sri Ram. All these follow-up stories of Lava Kusha and all those kind of things, and banishment of Sita and the famous washerman, the Dhobi, all those are later interpolations. It's something called the Uttara Ramayana, the Uttarakanda. And the Uttarakanda is very obviously not written by Valmiki, because it begins with these bunch of rishis coming in and praising Sri Rama for having killed Indrajit. Now I think Rama would remember who killed Indrajit. Quite apart from all the errors, all the narrative errors and the chronological errors and even the language is very obviously not that of Valmiki. It's an interpolative text. The usual culprits are a bunch called the Bhargava commentators. They used to go and pick up all the ancient books and they would insert their casteist agenda into it. So most of the books as we see today have been worked over by these guys called the Bhargava commentators. But the Uttarakanda is very clearly not, in terms of poetic quality, in terms of the type of Sanskrit used, in terms of. And in the Uttarakanda, there are a lot of stories which basically run down Ravana. That Ravana was defeated by who was that guy? That fellow Kartivira Arjuna, the guy with 1,000 arms. He was defeated by Vali. These are all later stories. They were not part of the original Ramayana. And because people didn't like that Ravana was also a great Shiva Bhakta, and so they wanted him to be more of a classical villain. So this whole business of the banishment of the pregnant wife and listening to the washerman and all that, we can put aside, because it's not basically part of the authentic narrative. Yes, it is part of the folk tradition. That sort of upsets me a bit, because what it tells me is that this is what the people of the country for thousands of years thought that their God was capable of doing. This was what we projected onto him. We, in one sense, that's what a normal person would have done. And a normal person feels ambivalent about it. he feels embarrassed about it. So Rama, poor fellow, because he was always a kind person, he has become a scapegoat for all our guilt and all our issues around female sexuality and things like that. But the story is much deeper, because then the other deeper criticism is that in Valmiki Ramayana he makes her go through Agni Pariksha, fire test, after he rescues her, that, and he criticizes her very severely. He speaks very harsh language, and he tells her you can go with anybody else, and I don't believe that a guy like Ravana would have left a beautiful woman like you alone. So let's look at that story, because that whole Agni Pariksha and the language he used, and the whole why is he blaming the woman for being kidnapped? Actually, he has every right to blame her for being kidnapped, because that was entirely her fault. Now, I know this part of the story is not usually well known, but here is the deal. When Ravana, the trouble begins early. The trouble begins because Shurpanaka, who is Ravana's brother, finds Rama very attractive and propositions. Yeah, and Rama refuses. He says, you can maybe try your luck with Lakshmana, my younger brother. Lakshmana also refuses. When she comes back and she attacks Sita, that time Lakshmana cuts her nose off and sends her away. So basically all this is an attempt at revenge on the part of Ravana for the treatment of his sister. But people are missing something very important about that story. Rama is a prince. Rama is the most handsome man of his time. Rama is in all senses an alpha man. And he's also done something completely unprecedented. Never before in human history, a guy at the top of the food chain, a guy at the top of society, the man with prestige, power, money, status, looks, fame. He says, I will have only one woman. Ekam Patni Vrata Purushottama. He is sworn to have only one wife. That is why he is Purushottama. Purusho me Uttam, which means best amongst men. Now, when a guy has money and fame, he usually uses it to collect as many women as he can. Does our poor Rama get any credit for that? He's a prince. He's just been propositioned by a very beautiful girl. Okay, in most versions she's very beautiful. In some versions Shurpanaka is not beautiful. But the fact of the matter is, it is perfectly within the norms of the culture. It is perfectly within the behaviors of the culture. If he had taken her up on that offer, he doesn't. Does he get any credit for that? Does he get any credit for creating this new pattern in relationships where you have only one central relationship and you try everything? Not at all. He only gets criticized. I think that is why when he next took avatar as Krishna, he basically said nobody seems to give any value to that good behavior. So even though it's very interesting about Krishna, that Krishna never ever once got married or chased any girl. Each time there was some unique circumstance and he had to kind of rescue her. He never once went out of his way for a girl. Though he ended up with 16,008 wives, which just made him exceedingly popular, because that 16,000 men who couldn't get a wife, So, but that is the nature even today. I mean, there is a sort of anti-feminist movement coming up in the West amongst men. It's called men's rights, male right activists. They're called MRAs, and what they're basically saying is that the way society is structured today is that the alphas, or the men with status and prestige and money, they get everything and the other men are left out. And in large parts of Japan and places like that, it's already happening, where men are pulling away from the whole business of getting married, saying it's not worth anymore. Because unless you have that kind of social prestige and money and power, it's no longer a game that is worth participating in, and they're refusing to get married, which is causing a demographic crisis. So Rama was the first man in in literature, in history, in mythology, to say that a man who is rich, a man who is famous, a man with status, power, and prestige should have only one central relationship. And we simply do not give him the credit for doing that because that is a step forward in human evolution. We still haven't got there. As soon as a guy becomes famous, as soon as a guy becomes rich, he immediately starts trading it off for access to more women. That's still the norm. That's still the well understood behavior. Everybody knows it is true. There is no doubt about that pattern. A few guys, either because they are scared or because they are fundamentally decent or because they are evolving, they realize that is not the way to do it. But he was the first man to say this. You see, the thing about patriarchy was the deal was female virginity was just a way to guarantee that the money and resources that the man has made goes to his own children and doesn't go to somebody else's kids. So this notion of the double standard is actually a false argument because it was never expected that the man would be a virgin. It was only expected that his money would go to his own children, which is why there was a stress on the. We can debate those issues, but the fact of the matter is Rama opened up a completely new way of relating. He actually acknowledged the woman to be his equal, and I will do, I will get my emotional satisfaction, my relationship satisfaction from just one. I won't trade on the fact that I am the greatest guy that the culture has seen. And when he is propositioned, he says no. When the regularly the rishtas would come, when the marriage proposals would come, he says no. I would just like to think what Arjuna would have done in a similar situation. you know. So first of all, he does not get any credit for being faithful to his wife, or even for the fact of saying, I will have only one wife. That is the first problem. We are so quick to criticize him, and we don't realize that he could have said, listen, I have options. And he never once. Because he was called Maryada Purushottam because he was fundamentally a guy who knew human limitations. He knew how a human being should function. If you try to exceed your limitations, most of the time you don't transcend. You actually devolve. You become more like an animal. So he understood that human beings should function within the limitations of being human beings. Ravana, on the other hand, was the classic case. If you read the Valmiki Ramayana, he had like thousands of women piled up. And that is the only difference between Rama and Ravana in terms of capability and because we must be honest, the greatest success that the world has ever seen, the universe has ever seen is Ravana in terms of money, in terms of power, in terms of fame, in terms of riches, in terms of being good looking, and he was the greatest Ayurvedic physician ever known. He was the greatest Shiva Bhakta ever known. Only Parvati was probably a greater Shiva Bhakta than him. So if we are talking accomplishment and success, there is no match to Ravana, not even Rama. There is absolutely no match. But when he puts all that in front of Sita and he tries to woo her, she also steps up the game and she says, no, I am with a guy who is more evolved than you. I am not going to take these external things. I am not going to take your private plane, which is basically what his Pushpaka Viman is, and I am not going to take your resources. That is not enough. Because all those are substitutes. You don't want to really engage with me. You want to purchase me. So she also comes from, and he's flabbergasted because that argument has worked with every other woman. Here, you have all the resources, you have all the power, you have all the, you're going to live your most perfect life. So in that case, Sita also we don't realize because she also takes one step forward and it was not forced. She also takes one step forward in relationships, in the evolution of human relationships and human consciousness, where she says, I am not going for resources, I am not going for status, I am not going for power and prestige, I am going for the quality of the guy. So I won't come with you. And he can't understand because all his arguments are, I am rich, I am famous, I am powerful, Rama is not got resources, I am better looking. Yes, it is true, he was also better looking. And he just can't understand what is this girl saying? What is the argument? Why is she rejecting me? He simply cannot understand that. And that is probably the reason why he never tried. Of course, he was under a curse, so he couldn't rape her or whatever. But he was under a curse that if he ever again did that, because that was the other bad thing that he used to do. Whenever he found a woman he liked, he would force himself on her until he got a curse that if you ever do that again, you will die instantly. But even if we leave that out of the equation, I think he was just stunned because the argument has worked till today. Why is it not working? And why can't I get this woman? In all other, always it has worked. And his own wife Mandodari is one of the 5 satis. She was also in many ways perhaps even more beautiful than Sita. And he just can't figure it out. He was puzzled, he was perplexed by this whole. So when he comes to kidnap her, with this whole business of, they talk about the punishment of Shurpanaka is the patriarchy punishing the sexually independent woman. Why is it never seen as that it is the faithful husband defending his relationship with his wife? I never understand that. So when Ravana comes to kidnap Sita, he gets his uncle, who's a magician, to transform himself into a deer with golden skin. And that is where Sita makes her blunder. So, in many ways, this whole mess that happened, it comes because she was not thinking correctly. Now, people are allowed to make mistakes. I am not one of those people who think that those we admire should be perfect, because as those who know me know that I keep saying the aim of yoga is not perfection, it is completion. The aim of yoga is, so people are allowed to make mistakes. She sees this deer with the golden skin and she wants it. At that moment, psychologically, Lakshmana, the younger brother, makes a tactical error and says, there is some enchantment, there is some magic in this, because who the hell has ever seen a golden deer? This is not real. This cannot be real. There is something odd about it. Now, she wants something, her brother-in-law is saying don't get it, so then she is determined, now I'll make my guy get it. It's pure and simple family dynamic, and it's rather pathetic that she fell for that. So she starts coaxing. She shared this one problem with Draupadi. She knew how to manipulate the guys in her life. So she starts coaxing him. And Lakshmana is constantly saying, this is wrong. There is something odd. There is some kind of trick to entice you away. And the more he is talking sense, the more she is becoming stubborn. Why is he stopping my husband from doing what? And people don't realize that it is not about Ravana that Valmiki wrote Vinashakali Viprita Buddhi, which means when the time for destruction comes, your own mind turns against you. It was about Rama. Because the phrase is that there has never been nor there ever will be a deer with golden skin, but Rama nevertheless chased it. Vinashakali Viprita Buddhi. So when she finds the arguments are not working, she pulls off one little manipulation which is quite wrong actually, because she says, you catch it and bring it and I'll give it as a gift to Bharata. Now Bharata is the brother the brother who refused to take the throne from Rama, and she knows he is Rama's weak spot. So now she presses that one manipulative button, and this guy is off to go and catch them. But before he goes, now again and again people say, why blame the woman for being kidnapped? You can blame the woman for being kidnapped because Rama made sure that she was protected. He left his brother there. No way Ravana could have beaten Lakshmana in time to kidnap her. Maybe in time, over a day's fight, maybe in the end he would have prevailed. But no way he could have kidnapped her. Lakshmana is there. The security is provided. Now that Maricha starts yelling and screaming, imitating Rama's voice, pretending that he's wounded, and so Sita gets upset and go and rescue, go and rescue. Lakshmana keeps saying, there is nobody in all the worlds, neither God nor Deva nor Gandharva nor Yaksha nor Rakshasa, who can stand up against Rama, because he has learned from Vishwamitra. He is the ultimate warrior in the universe. There is nobody who can stand up against him. This is again a trick. And out of her anxiety or God knows what, she says something that is so horrible that everybody pretends it is not there, but it is directly there in the Valmiki Ramayana. She says, you are sexually interested in me, so you are hoping that your brother will die so that you can start. I know nobody hears this part of the story, nobody knows this part of the story, but it is there. Once you say that, what can the fellow do? Swami Chinmayananda, when he got so upset about it, he said, how can a woman say that? How can she say such a, it's such a mean thing to say, when he got really upset with it. Vinashakale viparita buddhi, the mind is not working, it's a... So she sends him away after making this terrible accusation. Later on she knows, because when Hanuman meets her, her biggest concern is not even for Rama, it is for Lakshmana, because I have accused him in that manner and God knows how he must be dealing with it. That poor fellow, when she's kidnapped, she throws all her jewels down so that somebody will find. It's a clue. When the Vanaras, Vali, Sugriva and Hanuman find it and they show it, and Rama, of course, because he is busy crying, ever since she got kidnapped, he can't think straight. He's either in anger or he's crying. So he asks his brother, take a look at the jewels, and that fellow says something which is so heartrending. He says, I have never presumed to look at the jewels, but every day I would touch her feet so I know that this is the anklet that she wears. I recognize the anklet. That guy was accused that you are trying to kill your brother so that you can. So who is culpable? Whose responsibility for the kidnapping? Yes, of course, Ravana is the ultimate because he shouldn't have done that. But the fault is not Rama and the fault is not Lakshmana. And if we are going to blame him with modern ways of thinking, let's look at it from a modern perspective. Here is this girl who was a princess. As an outsider would look at it. After here is this girl who was a princess. Suddenly, 13 years she has to live in the forest with only one servant, a brother-in-law, in a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, wearing tree bark, because that was part of the deal. And now her husband is away, her brother-in-law is away, and the richest, most powerful man in the universe has come in his private plane and says, come away with me. You can live as a queen over the greatest empire the world has seen. That's how everybody was going to see it. That's how every single person was going to see it. Out of fear of Rama, they would keep their mouth shut, because he was known as Naravyagra, the human tiger. So that is the other thing we don't realize, because our notions of Rama, Arun Gogol and his Dalda smile, in that TV serial made by Ramanand Sagar, where he's always smiling in this thing. The fact of the matter was, Rama was a very, very, very dangerous fellow. He was not a Naravyagra. So when he makes all those harsh statements, he is psychologically one of the most astute fellows, one of the most wise fellows I've seen in Indian mythology. When he makes all those harsh accusations after rescuing her, he is merely saying what everybody else is thinking but does not dare to articulate. He was not a fool in any sense, After he comes back from the Vanavasa, the forest exile, he doesn't go directly into Ayodhya. He waits outside and he sends Hanuman. Just go and see. Bharata has been ruling for 14 years. If he's got used to being a king, I'm not stepping in. Because if I say, okay, now time for you to leave, there will be resentment and anger and hatred. So 14 years somebody is a king, he knows that he can get habituated to it. So when Hanuman comes back and says in 14 years he has never once sat on it, he has never gone near the throne, he has only kept your padukas on it, and he's living like you. He's eating the same food, he's sleeping on the floor, then and only then. So it was not like he was a fool. Whatever else he was not a fool, because when the situation demanded, he would do. Like Krishna, he would do whatever the situation demanded. He shot Vali from hiding. Everybody criticizes him for that. He had no choice in the matter. Vali had a gift that anybody stands in front of him, 50% of their power goes into him. It was his boon. So he could basically never be defeated. The only way to kill him was to do it from hiding. He did it. Because a hero will do whatever is necessary for the preservation of the social order. He won't stay under false notions of nobility at that moment. And Krishna, though, there is nothing that he would not do. But don't think Rama also would not do that. In this case, there was no option. Whereas in a straight fight, he has defeated Ravana once. The first time Ravana came out, he defeated him. He didn't kill him. He sent him back. So a man who can defeat Ravana in a straight fight, why does he hide and shoot at Bali? This is the reason why he does it. There was no other option. And he's after all Vishnu, Vishnu is the guy who took the Narasimha avatar. It is the ultimate problem solving. Whatever is in the boon, we'll deal with it some other time. So when he said all those harsh things to Sita, when he said all those cruel and wounding things to Sita, he was basically saying what he knows is in the mind of every man except maybe his brother. Is it possible that such a beautiful woman would be left unmolested by one fellow who's basically the most important thing in his life is obviously sex, because that's what Ravana was doing. Is it possible that she was kidnapped or she went willingly? All these questions are there. In everybody's mind, the questions are there. So by creating that entire scenario and then by doing that Agni Pariksha, the fire test, he's just shutting down these entire... Otherwise it would follow. It would consistently follow. Because he knows very well nothing of the sort has happened. But he knows very well also, if I don't put an end to all this gossip and this insinuation and innuendo right now, there will never be any peace for her, there will never be any peace for me. So he just says it. She does the Agni Pariksha, end of story. What is the big deal with that Agni Pariksha? I don't understand, because Draupadi used to do it every year. She used to spend 1 year at a time with each husband of hers, and at the end of the year she would do an Agni Pariksha that during this year I have never thought of anybody except this guy I have been with. Annual feature hota tha Draupadi ke liye. Jo itna, and nobody has any issues with that. So if you're talking culpability, yes, the language he uses is pretty bad, but the language she used against Lakshmana is much worse. If you're talking culpability, after he told her very specifically, don't move, listen to Lakshmana, sending him chasing that golden deer, it's all her fault. By the way, this whole Lakshman Rekha business, which is again one of the favorite arguments, it is all about patriarchy and keeping women within the bounds. The amazing thing is, you will not find it in any book. There is no mention anywhere that Lakshmana drew a line in the sand and told her, please don't cross it, or Ravana couldn't cross that. I think in the Kritivas Ravana, which is the Bengali Ramayana, which is the Bengali version, somewhere later on when the battle is going on, Mandodari, wife of Ravana, says you couldn't cross a line drawn on the sandbar. That is the only textual reference ever, but it has become such a part of the popular mind. It has become such a part. The Lakshman Rekha has become, because yes, so to the extent that the Lakshman Rekha is an aspect of patriarchy and controlling women, keeping them in the domestic sphere, those kind of things, it is true. But don't blame Rama and don't blame Valmiki. That is a societal problem. It is something, as usual, poor Rama is the fellow who has to take the blame for everything. Nobody thinks of blaming Krishna, who would just do whatever the hell he wanted, left, right, and center. He's a hero. Rama, who is just about the most decent human being the universe has ever seen, is the villain. But what to do? What to do? All this comes from ignorance of the culture. All this also comes from hatred of the culture, pure and simple anti-Hinduism, which today is known as secularism. It's a very simple hatred of anything that has to do with Hinduism, and at least people like us should not buy into all these things. These things are much more nuanced and complex. Rama is a much more, he's not a gently, benevolently smiling fellow all the time. No, he's a much more nuanced and complex person. Sita is much more nuanced, and she just made one error in life. She suffered a lot for that. I recently gave a talk where I said, you are not the worst thing you have done. Because circumstances may create something. One day you could have been somewhat absent-minded and your car runs over somebody. The rest of your life, you're the person who ran over somebody with your car, but that is not who you are. You might be an exceptional human being, but you will be branded forever with that. So just because Rama spoke like that and this Agni Pariksha, that does not negate all the phenomenally good things that he was and did, and what he did for human consciousness and human relationships. Women should be eternally grateful to him, because he is the guy who told men to clean up their act. He is the guy who told men, no, this is not acceptable. You can't go tomcatting around just because you got fame and money. But nobody seems to look at it that way. And I find it pathetic, because we all know Maryada Purushottam and we think that is obedience. Not at all. We don't know the Naravyagra part of it, because his teacher, his guru, was Rishi Vyagra, the tiger amongst rishis, Vishwamitra. He was also not a person who would, Rama had a very great sense. I've done a long talk on Maryada, so if you want, you can see that on YouTube, where I spoke about why Maryada is important. But Rama is even today, Rama and Sita are even today breakthroughs in evolutionary consciousness and relationship consciousness, which people still haven't caught up with. That is the real tragedy, and people are sitting, criticizing. And she was not one wishy-washy, namby-pamby at all. Because when he refused to take her to the forest, she actually said, my father by mistake has married me to a woman. That was a clinching argument. So she was quite a fiery person herself. Though of course, if a man made a statement, a sexist statement like that, 2 tons of bricks would fall on his head. She gets a free pass. But then feminism is also 95% hypocrisy, 5% good sense. It's about double standards big time. So the situation is not easy, and I'm like a man who has been regarded as the exemplar of the culture. When I see people taking these axes of ignorance to his reputation, I get upset. I get upset because he was and remains really, in human terms, the greatest thing that a human being was capable of. The avatar was there. This is what a human being should strive to evolve. He was a breakthrough in evolutionary consciousness. And I think at least people like us should not repeat mindlessly all the foolishness that we hear, because it all comes from ignorance of the text. It all comes from ignorance of the text. So I thought at Ram Navami at least let me do my part. Yeah, like Rama, I'm also a Shiva Bhakta. So, my fellow Bhakta, very, I find it very infuriating that people run him down in this manner, without realizing how much he has contributed, not just to Indian culture, how much he has just contributed to consciousness, how much he has just contributed to relationships, how much he has just contributed, just what is the optimal way to be a human being. I can tell you, there's nobody like Rama ever, ever, and we have turned him into this patriarchal sort of wife beater kind of thing, and it is a, well, you know, the culture becomes old, the culture becomes ignorant of its own books. What can be done? What can be done? That is not the fault of Rama, that is not the fault of Valmiki. Yeah? Sarvam